Imagine you're in the wilds of Australia. You're walking through lush rainforests, vast deserts, and rugged outback. All of a sudden, you come across an animal. It's not a fierce predator or a strange new creature. No, it's an ordinary animal, one you might think of as harmless. But wait, something feels off. This animal, though seemingly common, has turned into something monstrous. Cane toads, rabbits, feral cats, these creatures were once seen as harmless or even helpful, but now they're wreaking havoc on the Australian ecosystem. And what's worse, they're not the only ones. Australia's delicate balance of nature is under threat, and it's all because of a cocktail of invasive species, climate change, and human intervention. What's driving these animals to behave like monsters? Stay with us as we dive deep into this environmental crisis and uncover what could be the most disturbing story in Australia's natural history. Australia's ecosystem is one of the most extraordinary on Earth. Isolated from other continents for millions of years, Australia developed a completely unique set of plants and animals. Creatures like the kangaroo, the koala, and the platypus have evolved here in isolation, making Australia a living laboratory for nature's experiments. Over the years, these animals adapted to Australia's climate, thriving in an environment shaped by heat, droughts, and wildfires. The land itself, vast and unforgiving, cultivated species that were finely tuned to survive. But then came the introduction of foreign species, and with them, disruption. Ordinary animals, once part of Australia's natural harmony, have turned into unpredictable and monstrous threats. In the late 18th century, European settlers arrived in Australia. They brought with them their culture, technologies, and their domesticated animals, cattle, sheep, and horses. But they also introduced non-native species, sometimes intentionally and sometimes by accident. And these introductions, once isolated to the human settlements, would soon spread far and wide, often with disastrous consequences. Today, we look at the invasion of animals like the cane toad, the European rabbit, and the feral cat. Each one of these creatures started as just another animal, harmless, or even beneficial in some cases. But over time, they've become something far worse, monstrous invaders pushing native species to the brink of extinction. We start with the infamous cane toad. Introduced to Australia in the 1930s from Central and South America, cane toads were brought in with one purpose: to control the beetles that were damaging sugarcane crops. At first, it seemed like the perfect solution. But what the settlers didn't realize was that the cane toad had no natural predators in Australia, and it would multiply uncontrollably. Fast forward to today, and cane toads have become one of the most notorious invasive species in Australia. They've spread across the continent at an alarming rate, and their population now numbers in the hundreds of millions. But the real danger of the cane toad lies in its toxicity. The cane toads secrete a powerful toxin from their skin, and this toxin is deadly to many native predators such as snakes, lizards, and even some birds. When these animals try to eat the toad, they don't just get a bad stomachache, they die. This toxin has created a chain reaction, decimating predator populations and altering the delicate balance of Australia's ecosystems. The devastating impact of the cane toad is evident in the numbers. Species like the northern quoll, a small marsupial, have been driven to near extinction in areas overrun by cane toads. This is no longer just an invasion of an animal, it's the poisoning of a whole ecosystem. Next up, the European rabbit. Introduced in the 18th century for hunting, rabbits quickly adapted to Australia's landscape. And before long, they were everywhere. Rabbits, once a source of food and sport, turned into a plague. With no natural predators to keep them in check, rabbits exploded in numbers, devastating the land. They're a voracious species, constantly eating, and in the process they stripped the land of native vegetation. Farmers, conservationists, and even the government began to realize the true extent of the damage. Rabbits are a major cause of soil erosion. When they eat all the vegetation, the ground becomes barren, making it impossible for native plants to grow back. In many places, their grazing has wiped out entire plant species. The destruction is so severe that it has led to the collapse of entire ecosystems. And once the land is gone, the animals that rely on it for food are next in line for extinction. While rabbits were eating the land, the feral cat was silently stalking its prey. Cats, once domestic, became feral when abandoned or escaped, and these feral cats are among the most effective and deadly hunters in the world. Feral cats are efficient predators, and they've caused unimaginable harm to Australia's native wildlife. In fact, they're responsible for the extinction of many small mammals, birds, and reptiles. Unlike cane toads or rabbits, feral cats don't just overwhelm their environment, they methodically eliminate it. Every night, feral cats are killing millions of native species, wiping out small mammals and birds that have nowhere to hide. The Australian government has even declared war on feral cats, with programs aimed at reducing their numbers and protecting vulnerable species. As if invasive species weren't enough, climate change is making things worse. Australia is experiencing more frequent and severe weather events, droughts, wildfires, floods, that are changing the landscape in profound ways. Rising temperatures and shifting rainfall patterns are forcing many native species to migrate to new areas. But this migration isn't always smooth. New territories mean more competition for food, more risk of encountering predators, whether native or invasive, and a constant battle to survive. Climate change has made it easier for invasive species like rabbits, cats, and toads to spread into new environments, while making life harder for the native species that are already struggling. Despite the devastation, there is hope. Australia is fighting back against these invasive species. Conservation efforts are underway across the country to protect native wildlife and restore the ecosystem. Programs to trap feral cats, destroy rabbit burrows, and prevent the spread of cane toads are in full force. The story of Australia's monstrous animals is a powerful reminder of how fragile our ecosystems truly are. When humans intervene in nature's balance, whether by introducing non-native species or altering the climate, the consequences can be far-reaching, but it's not too late. If we learn from Australia's challenges, we can make better choices and help preserve our planet's delicate ecosystems. Because in the end, it's up to us to protect the balance of nature before the monsters take over.